Scientists and archaeologists would have an easy life if all of their discoveries came with simple explanations. But the world don't work that way. Experts have to perform research when they come across things they don't understand. But sometimes they're still left with questions no matter how much research they do. Make yourself comfortable for this video tour of puzzling archaeological discoveries. We're starting off in England, where an exceptional hoard of Roman gold coins was discovered close to the city of Norwich in July 2022. Roman coin discoveries aren't exactly uncommon in England, as it's a former Roman territory. But there's a twist with this discovery. The coins were minted decades before the Romans invaded Britain. The 11 gold coins were found on land that was once dominated by the Iceni tribe, who rose up against the Romans under the leadership of Queen Boudica. Considering that the coins are a little over 2,000 years old, they're in incredibly good condition. Adrian Marsden, a numismatist, says the coins were minted in Lyon, France, back when it was under Roman control and known as Lugdunum. The oldest of the coins was struck during the final years of the 1st century BCE, and the most recent was struck about 20 years before the Romans invaded in the year 43. Their value would be equivalent to around 2 years' salary for a Roman soldier. How they came to be in Britain before the Romans arrived is unknown, but their presence suggests that the ancient Brits and Romans may have been trading partners before the invasion. We've always known that Via Tiburtina, which leads out of Rome to the northeast of the city, is an ancient Roman road. However, what we didn't know until very recently is that Via Tiburtina also features a rare Roman Republic-era bridge. Archaeologists have now found the remains of the bridge, along with pottery and tufa blocks left over from its construction. By studying these artifacts, they've been able to confirm that the bridge was created around 2,200 years ago. Its purpose was to cross a small tributary of the Anine River called the Fosso de Pratolungo. The road itself is around 100 years older. Bridges from the time of the Middle Republic are incredibly rare finds. Until now, the oldest in the city of Rome has been the Pons Fabricus, which can trace its roots to the year 62 BCE. That's right at the end of the Roman Republic period. However, anyone who likes the idea of checking the bridge out for themselves ought not to get too excited. It's going to be extensively mapped and surveyed, but once the professionals are done with it, they'll rebury it for its own protection. The Tiburtina is being enlarged, and this discovery doesn't change those plans. If it wasn't buried, it would be destroyed by construction work. What's better than finding a gold ring in a prehistoric grave? Finding 169 gold rings in a prehistoric grave. This is a haul of golden rings so big that Sonic the Hedgehog would have been proud of it. The rings were found in a prehistoric grave site in Bihor County, Crișana, Romania in August 2022, as construction workers dug up the ground in the region ahead of the construction of a new road. In doing so, they discovered 3 Neolithic-era grave sites, 2 graves from the Bronze Age and a further 2 from the Roman era. It's likely that the female occupant of the grave containing the gold rings was from the Tizapolgar culture, which lived in Crișana 6,500 years ago. If you're wondering what she needed so many rings for, they were holding her hair in place. They weren't the only accessories she was buried with. The grave also contained a copper bracelet, neck rings, golden beads, and a further 800 beads made from animal bones. Unsurprisingly, archaeologists are confident that she was a high-ranking member of this ancient society, perhaps even a queen. Of all the things you might find buried in the ground, an unexploded World War II-era bomb has to be among the most alarming. Fortunately for the people of Germany, such things are found there more often than you might imagine. A particularly large one was discovered in Frankfurt in September 2017, forcing the evacuation of thousands of people from the city. The Colossal Bomb was found during construction work in the West End suburb of Frankfurt. and experts were so worried about it that they ordered 60,000 people to temporarily leave their homes. That's the largest evacuation in Germany since the war itself. According to the calculations of bomb disposal specialists, the device was potent enough to flatten an entire city block if it exploded. Fortunately, the specialists were able to defuse the bomb and take it away. Even now, more than 70 years after the end of the war, more than 2,000 tons of live bombs are found in Germany every year. The Allies dropped more than 1.5 million tons of explosives on the country during the war, some 15% of which never exploded and are still buried, waiting to be found. The crew of the Dutch fishing vessel Varenger 22 were performing their regular everyday duties in July 2022 when they caught something unexpected. The shrimp cutter ensnared a strange-looking wooden statue, and experts still aren't sure what to make of it. The statue is of the kind that would have sat on the stern of Dutch vessels of the 17th century, but it's in such good condition that it's hard to believe it could be so old. To confuse matters further, the individual depicted by the statue appears to be wearing a Phrygian cap. Caps like this were worn in battle by Phrygian warriors, but those battles occurred more than 1,000 years before the 17th century. The caps were important to the Phrygians because they were symbols of overcoming oppression. When Phrygians were enslaved by Romans, they were shaved bald. When they regained their freedom, they wore caps to hide their baldness, initially out of shame. But over time, the caps came to represent freedom rather than shame. Experts are fairly sure the sculpture isn't a hoax, but will only know for sure after they've examined it. They can't do that yet because it needs to undergo preservation work now it's been removed from the water. In 2021, a 1,200-year-old canoe was found in Lake Mendota in Wisconsin, USA. Almost exactly a year later, in September 2022, another canoe was found in almost the same place, only this one's even older. Radiocarbon analysis of the canoe dates it to almost exactly the year 1000 BCE, making it 3,000 years old. That means it's comfortably the oldest canoe ever found in the Great Lakes region of the United States of America, beating the previous record holder by an entire 1,000 years. On top of that, it's also the oldest direct physical evidence of people in the region using water transportation. Scientists and archaeologists were so stunned by the results of the tests that they had the ancient vessel retested 3 times to make sure there was no mistake. The fact that 2 ancient canoes have been found in such close proximity makes archaeologists wonder whether there was once a lakeside settlement here in ancient times, and so they're now scouring the former shoreline to see if there's any evidence to confirm the theory. The canoe will be cleaned and conserved with the assistance of local tribal members. We in the 21st century know that vampires aren't real, but the people of the 18th century weren't so sure. There's proof of that in a grave that was recently discovered and opened in Bydgoszcz, Poland. When they opened the grave in early September 2022, archaeologists from Torun Nicholas Copernicus University found the remains of a woman who was buried with a sickle across her neck. After consulting experts, they discovered that this was a method employed in the burial of suspected vampires, as it was thought that the sickle would prevent the woman from rising from the dead and attacking the living. While these 18th century Poles wouldn't have believed in vampires of the kind described by Bram Stoker, belief in vampire-like creatures goes back thousands of years and is referred to in the texts of the Babylonians, Assyrians, and Akkadians. In the case of this woman, she had protruding front teeth, and that alone might have been enough for the superstitious people of her time to label her a witch. Witches were thought to be capable of rising from the dead as vampires, hence the sickle. Despite this, she was buried with a silk cap on her head, which signifies that she was of relatively high social status. For the past 12 months, archaeologists have been recovering old cannons from the Savannah River in Georgia, USA. They've been turning up at a rate of more than one every month. So as of the end of April 2022, there are 19 of them. Scientists have tested the cannons and believe them to be around 240 years old. Rather than being American weapons, it's almost certain that they came from British ships that were scuttled during the Revolutionary War. The first of the cannons was found by accident. There's an ongoing plan to deepen the river's shipping channel, and a dredge being used to do precisely that emerged from the river in early 2021, clasping a cannon in its jaws. That prompted archaeologists to get in the water and perform a more thorough check, and so the chain of discoveries began. At first, it was thought that the cannons would turn out to be relics from a Confederate gunship, the wreckage of which was found in the river several years ago. But that isn't the case. Military historians confirmed that the cannons aren't of American design, and so that means that, almost by default, they have to be relics of the Siege of Savannah in 1779. 2022 is the 1900th anniversary of the creation of Hadrian's Wall in the United Kingdom. Countless ancient Roman artifacts have been found in and around the vicinity of the wall over the years, but archaeologists found a special one in February 2022 to kick off the anniversary year celebrations. The discovery was made at Vindolanda, a Roman fort at the wall's southernmost point. It's an ancient stone altar, and it was found entirely by accident. Staff from the Vindolanda Museum were cleaning away the remains of a tree which fell into Vindolanda Stream after a recent storm, when they found the remains of the altar beneath the surface of the water. It's badly damaged and weathered by the many years it spent in the water. So while there was probably once an inscription on its surface, it's long since worn away. Based on its design, experts from the museum think the altar was probably carved during the 3rd century. It's possible that there are other pieces of the altar elsewhere in the stream, so searching for them was scheduled as a priority task when water levels dropped later in the year. In December 2021, archaeologists in China confirmed the discovery of a bronze-lidded vessel inside a tomb at the site of Liulihe, close to Beijing. This is being treated as a significant find because the vessel is thought to date back to the very foundation of Beijing as a city during the Western Shao Dynasty era 3,000 years ago. To make the vessel even more interesting, it's thought to be a match for another bronze vessel that was found at the site during the 1970s. It seems the decorated food containers were made as a pair. Both vessels bear inscriptions that include a character called Yang, which is a specific reference to the establishment of a new city. During the Western Shao period, bronze vessels were strictly off-limits to anybody who wasn't a member of the ruling class. There were even rules about how many of them a noble person could have in their grave when they died. There's a strong chance that these vessels belong to someone who played a direct role in the creation of Beijing. It's a shame that we don't know their name. More than 2,000 years ago, somebody living on the tiny English Channel island of Jersey hid 50,000 coins from the advancing Roman Empire by burying them. In 2012, the coins were discovered by a pair of friends scouring farmland on the island with their metal detectors. Richard Miles and Reg Mead are now responsible for the largest haul of ancient Celtic coinage ever to be discovered in Europe. The coins weigh 3/4 of a ton and have an estimated value of more than 10 million pounds. Whoever buried the coins went to great lengths to ensure that nobody else would find them. They were buried in a hole more than 3 feet deep and stashed within a mound of clay. In fact, they were so well hidden that even the person who hid them may never have been able to find them again, which might explain why they never dug them back up again. It's likely that the owner of this vast wealth was a member of the Corisolitae tribe of northern Brittany. The coins might even have represented the entire wealth of the tribe, but we'll never know for sure. The Galloway hoard is the most valuable Viking treasure ever discovered in Britain. It was discovered in a field in Castle Douglas, Scotland, by an amateur metal detectorist in 2014 and is still being meticulously researched item by item. A carved rock crystal jar was painstakingly cleaned and re-examined in December 2021 at a facility operated by National Museums Scotland. That re-examination found it to be Anglo-Saxon rather than Viking in origin. It's a Roman-style crystal jar from the 8th or 9th century, with the name of an Anglo-Saxon bishop engraved on the base. "Bishop Highgold had me made," is what the inscription reads. This raises the possibility that Vikings raided a church in Northumbria and buried their loot with other Viking antiquities. It also implies that the hoard may contain other non-Viking artifacts. One of them, a silver pectoral cross with niello enamel work that is unlike anything else in the world, might be the collection's centerpiece. We've always believed the Vikings created it until now, but we're back to square one with no notion of what's Viking and what isn't.
Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon!